Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
Several Americans are among the survivors of a terror attack last night in West Africa. At least 28 people were killed in the assault on a hotel and cafe in Burkina Faso.
Video captured the moment Burkina Faso security forces, guns drawn, moved in Saturday morning. The target, the Splendid Hotel, a luxury building in the capital city of Ouagadougou. Inside, a group of heavily armed terrorists, their hostages, and many others hiding for their lives. The hotel and a neighboring cafe came under siege the night before. The attackers stormed in with guns, planted explosives, and reportedly detonated car bombs. Witnesses say they yelled Allah Akbar while opening fire. People were lying on the ground and there was blood everywhere. They were shooting people at point-blank range, said Yannick Sawadogo. Over 12 Americans were among those inside. A U.S. State Department official says 3 were rescued, 4 escaped, and 8 sheltered in place until the battle was over. 2 remain unaccounted for. Local police, supported by French commandos and 2 members of the United States military, eventually took back control this afternoon. Officials say 3 attackers were killed, including 2 women. More than 100 hostages, some of them young children, were brought to safety. Paramedics were seen trying to save those who couldn't walk away, including this wounded soldier. The dust hadn't even settled before Al-Qaeda and the Islamic Maghreb took credit for the attack. They are the same group that carried out a similar assault on a hotel in Mali that left 20 people dead.
Fierce fighting raged Saturday between Syrian government forces backed by Russian airstrikes and Islamic State militants in northern Aleppo province. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a UK-based monitor, said at least 16 ISIL fighters had been killed in a failed attack on a government position near the town of Al Bab in the northeast of the province. State television also reported that government forces had repelled an assault. The monitor said Russian warplanes carried out strikes in the region between the government-held Queriz Air Base and Al Bab. In recent days, government forces have advanced toward the town, which is an ISIL bastion and is now within 10 kilometers of it. That is the closest the government forces have come to the town since 2012.
Analysts say this video shows 4 different armed groups from the southern Philippine island of Mindanao, together with foreign operatives, all pledging allegiance to the Islamic State, also known as IS, ISIS, or ISIL. It is evidence, they say, of ISIL slowly being able to establish its presence in Southeast Asia. It is the latest in a string of videos released online that feature Muslim militants from the southern Philippines aligning themselves with ISIL. This alleged ISIL training camp is seen in footage posted online in November and December last year. One of them is accompanied by a threat against the APEC summit in Manila. The Philippine military acknowledges the existence of ISIL sympathizers and followers in the south, but insists they have no direct links to ISIL.
In our assessment, there remains to be no direct, verified, and credible links. And we see that as a means of propaganda, just primarily, as I mentioned, to be able to get some degree of support. And the support can come in financial, which I think is the primary motive.
Banawi believes Philippine authorities have so far been effective in foiling attempts to carry out terror attacks, like the one that just happened in Jakarta. But with recognition and support from ISIL now apparently closer to reality, he says authorities shouldn't let their guard down.
It's just a matter of time because these groups have the intention and capabilities to pursue bombing operations in Metro Manila.
Terror attacks have been carried out here in the Philippines, mostly in the south, some here in the capital. But experts say what's alarming is that they could be doing it now under the brand of ISIL, a group that's proven to be more brazen and radical than Al-Qaeda.
The search continues for 12 Marines after 2 helicopters collided off Hawaii. 3 days after the crash, hope of finding survivors is fading.
Protesters are calling for an end to a weeks-long curfew as the military ramps up its fight against Kurdish separatists. During clashes between protesters and security forces, a Turkish police officer and a soldier were killed by sniper fire. 2 Kurdish militants were shot dead in separate incidents. The violence came as the Turkish military announced it's killed 544 Kurdish militants since December the 15th.
And next door in Syria, it's now 2 days since Islamic State militants killed scores of people in the city of Deir al-Zor and kidnapped 400 others. ISIL abducted families of pro-government fighters when they launched an assault on the eastern city on Saturday. The hostages are believed to have been taken to the Islamic State stronghold in Raqqa. There are now fears that they may be murdered. Eyewitnesses told CCTV that ISIL militants had already killed over 100 civilians, along with 50 Syrian army soldiers and pro-government fighters in a suburb of the city. Some of them were crucified and others beheaded.
A state of economic and social emergency is declared in France as the country struggles with high unemployment and stagnant growth.
I believe that faced with a global situation of economic uncertainty and persistent unemployment, we must also announce an economic and social state of emergency. I am disappointed as growth remains too slow.
The French President François Hollande made the announcement in an annual address to business leaders in Paris. The measures include more than $2 billion in subsidies and programs to boost youth unemployment. Hollande's socialist government has struggled to reduce the chronic unemployment, which has been at 10% for years. France is already under a state of emergency since terrorist attacks in November.
Now to Libya, where the United Nations has called on the country's lawmakers to endorse the new UN-brokered National Unity Government after less than half of the members of parliament signed up to the agreement. The government, headed by businessman Fayez al-Sarraj, comprises 32 ministers. Libya has been in chaos since the 2011 ouster and killing of Muammar Gaddafi. The country has 2 rival parliaments and administrations. In December, under UN guidance, around 80 lawmakers from the internationally recognized parliament and 50 members of the Tripoli-based General National Congress signed the deal. World powers are pressing all sides to accept the power-sharing agreement.
Airstrikes hammer ISIL from the sky. But on the ground, the Islamic State and their barrage of online propaganda has been winning the battle for potential recruits. In a recent online posting, ISIL brags about the breadth of its propaganda over the last year. 18 magazines in 11 languages, more than 700 videos, thousands of photos. Western governments struggle to keep up. The U.S. State Department has produced 32 videos intended to compete with ISIL and runs an anti-ISIL Twitter feed. It's unclear if any of the 10,000 tweets have had much impact. A panel of tech industry professionals assembled by the State Department to assess U.S. anti-extremism messaging efforts questions the effectiveness of these programs. They instead recommend the U.S. partner with outside groups.
The U.S. government is probably not the most effective voice in this sphere, and we're constantly evaluating our messaging.
Damascus has blamed the recent ISIL massacre in Syria's Deir al-Zor province on countries that support terrorism. The Foreign Ministry says such killings are a continuation of a series of barbaric and methodical terrorist attacks by armed groups. It said the terrorists are receiving funds from some regional countries as well as states beyond the region. It adds that these countries employ terrorists to serve their own narrow interests and geopolitical agendas in the region. Meanwhile, Russia says its air force has destroyed Daesh strongholds in Deir al-Zor, where Syrian civilians were executed. The Russian Defense Ministry has also announced that its warplanes have hit nearly 600 terrorist targets over the past 4 days. This is while Syrian bombers have targeted a terrorist camp in the ISIL-held city of Raqqa, killing more than 80 terrorists and destroying 3 trucks loaded with weapons. The attacks have also demolished ISIL oil depots and refineries in the city.
Health officials in this country are reporting new cases of a mosquito-borne virus linked to birth defects. This morning, Florida has 3 confirmed cases of the Zika virus. Illinois said yesterday that 2 pregnant women tested positive there. Texas and Hawaii also have confirmed cases, including a baby born with a birth defect.
The Zika virus is transmitted by the Aedes mosquito. It's been determined women can pass the virus to their babies, causing birth defects. The CDC's warning to pregnant women is clear. If you have symptoms, see a doctor and get tested for an infection. All of the Zika cases in the U.S. involve foreign travel. The Florida victims traveled to Colombia and Venezuela. The 2 pregnant women in Illinois visited Central America and the Caribbean. A baby was born with birth defects in Hawaii after his mother made a trip to Brazil. And a Texas man was diagnosed after he returned from El Salvador in November.
The 2 cases that we have in Illinois are in individuals who traveled and then came back and were diagnosed. Because the mosquito that transmits it is not one that we have here in Illinois, we believe the risk to Illinoisans is virtually zero.
The CDC has named 14 countries and territories in Latin America and the Caribbean, including Puerto Rico, Mexico, and Haiti, and are advising pregnant women to avoid travel there. Brazil is claiming thousands of babies have been born with brain injuries. Officials there are urging women who can wait to hold off on becoming pregnant until the crisis is under control.
And we're following breaking news, a terror attack on a university in Pakistan. At least 20 people are dead. Gunmen opened fire on students and staff early today on the campus in the northwestern part of the country.
The 4 Taliban attackers climbed over the back walls of this university, shot at a security guard, and headed for the administration building and student dorms. After hours of gun battle and many dead and wounded, the Pakistani military killed the gunmen.
There were 4 or 5 who entered from the right side of the university, and they started firing. The external university security staff replied all at once, but they looked very professional, and they successfully reached the end of the last building.
I heard when they were shouting, "Allah is great." I was hiding under the desk with 2 of my colleagues and 1 staff member.
It was just 14 months ago that the Taliban attacked another school in northwest Pakistan, killing more than 150 people.
And the Taliban is claiming responsibility for this attack as well, saying that it's revenge for the thousands of militants that the Pakistani military has killed in recent months.
Pakistan's northwest region is highly volatile. Since 2014, Pakistani forces have carried out a major operation there against the Taliban and other militants. Last month, the government said it had killed 3,500 insurgents since launching the campaign. Baka Khan University is named after the founder of a liberal anti-Taliban party. The Pakistani Taliban have targeted the party in the past for its anti-militant policies.